I'm Mike Hebert. I'm the state representative for Guilford and Vernon, but I'm also on the Natural Resources Committee for the state of Vermont. It's Natural Resources and Energy. There's two committees. One is Natural Resources and Energy, and the other one is Natural Resources, but it's Fish and Wildlife. So I'm very pleased to be on the Energy Committee. So we've been talking about smart grid for a long time. And the Public Service Board has had a docket on smart grid for a long time. I think it's closing out soon, or it's closed now, the docket? It's still open. Okay. So the Public Service Board is doing that. So after tonight, if you want, you can get on their website and kind of check what the Public Service Board has to say. You can give comment. And it's always important for them to get that. When the discussion began about the smart grid, and then smart meters in particular, I started receiving a lot of concerns from people about health issues and the issues of privacy, those types of things. And then fortunately, I was wondering, how am I going to get people together to talk about smart meters? And then Green Mountain Power put together a presentation that they wanted to travel throughout the state and said, would you like to have a forum? And I said, as a matter of fact, yes, I would. So I set up the forum with Green Mountain Power and also with the Department of Public Service. So they are going to provide us with information this evening. I have also heard from many organizations that are dead set against smart meters. Okay, there's a handout over there from Stop Smart Meters in Vermont. It's their mission statement. They're not here this evening, but I did tell them I would put their mission statement on so people could look at that, and you can contact them on the bottom of the page is their website information. And they are very concerned with the health issues around the smart metering. And then there's another handout there, Vermonters for Clean Energy on one side, and on the other side is the ACLU. And the ACLU concerns about privacy and those sorts of things. So there's information there. So we are getting information from both sides, but I didn't want this to be a debate or a confrontation. I want information given this evening from one side. And I did speak with the head of the Stop Smart Meters in Vermont, spoke with her over the last few days, spoke with her this afternoon about 1 o'clock, and said if she would like, I would be perfectly willing to have another forum or sponsor something maybe in Guilford, Rodwell, or again here in Vernon, that would allow them to give their side. Because the presentation that they have is anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. And I thought we're better off just sticking to one side tonight. There's going to be a lot of information to digest, and I think that would be the best way to do it. So actually you didn't come here to listen to me, you came to hear from Brian Utley. He is the Chief Operations Officer for Green Mountain Power, and he will address smart grid and smart meters. And also, we're very lucky to have Jim Porter here. He's with the Department of Public Service. I had invited the commissioner down, and there are other things happening in Montpelier, so she was a little busy. And her being busy was actually fortunate for us, because after the conversation with her, I found out that Jim was one of the point people on the opt-out policy. So he can address that. He worked very hard to make sure that there was an opt-out policy in the state of Vermont, which is a very important thing. I prefer opt-in type items, but we have an opt-out, but there is some sort of a choice. So with no further ado, Brian?
So good evening, everyone. I want to first thank you for coming out. I know it's not easy to get out and do things like this, but this is about our 30th town community-based meeting that we've been doing over probably the last 12 months. We've been cycling around, meeting with towns either at the select board level or the town energy committee level of all the towns in our service territory. And these are a great way for us to get some information to you guys directly, let you guys ask some questions, and just understand what our plans are all about. So what I'm going to do is just two things tonight. First thing I'm going to do is start off with just an overview of what the next year looks like in the Vernon area from a GMP standpoint as it relates to any work we're going to be doing on the lines, preventive maintenance, tree trimming, and things like that. And then I'll give you an overview of our smart grid program and what we're going to be doing over the next about 18 months. to inject a lot of new capabilities into our electrical system. Okay? As I go through this, if you have questions, just please interrupt, and I'd rather have a conversation than a one-way dialogue, if that's okay. Okay, so as I said, we're going to go through the field work in Vernon, our GMP Connects, that's our little snazzy marketing name for our smart grid project, and then as I said, Q&A throughout that. So you can page down, Joy. Thank you. Okay, so a little bit hard to read, but first thing is tree trimming. We did tree trimming. We're on a 7-year tree trimming cycle, so we trim out trees in the distribution right-of-ways so that when storms come through, whether it's wind or snow or ice or whatever, the less foliage we have hanging over the lines, the better reliability we're going to end up having. We're still maintaining a policy. We do not apply herbicides to the right-of-ways. We did a survey. I think every 3 years we renew that survey with our customers and just get kind of a sample vote of whether our customers generally approve of the application of herbicides in the right-of-ways or not. In the last, I think, 8 or so years, the consensus has been no, so we honor that and we do not apply herbicides during that time. But Vernon area was trimmed out in 2008, so we won't be back again to do preventive trimming until about 2014. We will still do spot trimming where we either weren't able to get access to a right-of-way or a certain part of the line because of either a landowner's wishes or we couldn't get certain approvals from the landowner. We always respect those things, but we're not due to be back until about 2014. So the system in this area should be in good shape from a tree trimming standpoint. In 2012, there's not a lot of capital work planned for the area. We've done some capital work in this area in the past few years, and this year coming up is going to be a relatively quiet year. The system's in relatively good shape. The big thing we wanted to point out is some of you may have heard in the news recently, there is a proposal that Green Mountain Power is going to merge with Central Vermont Public Service. We're working on that right now to bring the two larger utilities in the state together into a single utility to drive a lot of cost out of our delivery system and essentially save a lot of money for customers. One of the opportunities that results out of that is the way our system is set up right now. Our GMP substation in the area is what we call single fed. So if the sub goes down, the area is going to incur some outages until we can get that sub back up. There's not a way to reroute power in the local area based on our system. CVPS has a substation right up the road in Brattleboro, and once we complete this merger, we'll be able to tie those two substations together so that we can feed this area from either side, so that if one side goes out due to either a substation fault or a big tree on the line or whatever it might be, we'll be able to reroute power, do what we call sectionalizing, reroute power from the other side and restore power back much, much more quickly while we do the right maintenance to take whatever the original cause was out of effect. So we're looking forward to doing a lot of that work in the coming years. We think there's a lot of opportunity in this merger with CVPS, so a lot of that stuff will drive a lot of cost out of the system, and all of that falls back into the form of lower rates to our customers. So I wish I had more to talk about, but we've done a pretty good job in the area lately, and so not a lot. 2012 will be a relatively quiet period unless we have really, really bad weather, which seems to be the lay of the land. Any questions on tree trimming, capital work, anything like that? Okay. So we're going to move on to smart grid. This is the point of why we're here. So when we look at taking on new projects, we look at it based on 3 objectives or 3 criteria, right? We look at cost. We want to be the low-cost leader in the region. And as of right now, GMP from a residential standpoint, I think out of all the utilities in New England, we're in the top 3 in terms of having the lowest residential rates in New England, which is pretty good. We're pretty proud of that. We look at things from a carbon standpoint or a low emission standpoint. Vermont on the whole, and then Green Mountain Power specifically, believe it or not, we sit in the envious position of being the lowest emitting electric distribution utility in the country right now. Based on our power supply mix, as many of you know, we get a lot of our power from up north in Hydro-Quebec. Currently, we're taking power from VY, and how that resolves, we'll see. And then we've got a good mix of in-state renewable power sources from our hydro dams. We've got our wind farm just down across the state in Searsburg, and we've invested a lot in solar in the last 2 years. So all of those things combined make our power supply mix very low emissions. And GMP, along with CVPS and some of the other Vermont utilities, have the lowest emission rate of any electric distribution utility in the country. So that's something we're pretty proud of. And then the third element that we look at all of our decision making on is reliability, right? Reliability is non-negotiable. Our customers, whether they're residential customers or business customers, rely on that power to do what they do every day. Electric delivery is a big driver of the local economy, and you have to have it. So while we're not perfect in our delivery of reliability, simply because of the climate we have around Vermont, we do a pretty good job, and it is one of our top criteria that we keep an eye on at all times. So that's the lens. You can go down. That's the lens by which we took a look at, starting I think in 2007. We began looking at upgrading our system so that we were getting more intelligence out of it. That's the genesis of what we call our Smart Grid project. Today, if you look at our system, a classic system is you've got a generating plant in the top right, and these cartoon characters are not very emblematic, but that could be a wind farm, it could be a hydro dam, it could be whatever. Those sources send power down a transmission line to a substation where that power is stepped down to lower voltages where they're distributed along the streets and roads on the poles and then delivered either to a business or to a home. In today's environment, the grid is largely, and it's going to sound awkward, but it's pretty dumb. It doesn't talk to us very much. So when you suffer a power outage at your home, if you don't call us, we don't know. That's the key for us to start putting our workforce into gear, is when you make that phone call. If you think about a lot of the other industries in the U.S., not many of them can operate like that. It's a little bit of a 1950s model where we basically wait for a customer to call us to let us know something about our own system. But that's the way the original grid was designed. We've got strong power or lines and poles, and the system works at a remarkably high percentage of the time, but it doesn't tell us a lot about itself. We don't have a lot of information about how things are operating and how things are, what the environmental attributes are in the system at any one time. So the Smart Grid is all about using technology to inject intelligence at discrete points throughout this system. Okay? If you think about, the analogy I use is, if you think about someone's going in for surgery, right? The physicians run a whole battery of tests on those patients before they sign off on that patient being a candidate for whatever surgery they're having. You have to find out about a lot of the environmental attributes about how that patient is. What's their blood pressure? What's their blood content? How are their enzyme levels? All the things that would make them a candidate to safely be put under and go through a surgery. You have to know about that information before you do it. Same thing applies ideally in the future electric grid. The more we know about how things are operating in near real time, the more opportunities we have to flexibly operate the grid to save money, operate more cost effectively, and with higher reliability. Okay? As it relates to carbon, by having more intelligence, we'll be able to bring more local renewables on to the grid safely. If we had 50% of our customers next year say, you know what, I'm going to slap a few solar panels up on the roof of my home, and that's what we want to do, that would cause us a real problem. We probably have 2% of our customers today using solar panels on their roofs. If that number suddenly increased to 50%, we would have a real challenge of how to manage that intermittent load, because solar panels don't always generate. When it's nighttime, they don't generate. When it's cloudy, when there's snow on them, they don't generate. And our job is to always balance the load on the system. So if we have all of these new inputs and we don't have the intelligence to adequately control and balance that load, we run into reliability problems. We can literally disrupt the stability of the system. So for all those reasons, our Smart Grid program is about putting intelligence at discrete points throughout our system that will feed us information in real time so that we can do more and more things with our system, including opening up access to it to customers that want to get into local renewable generation. Okay? So just some background on what's going on in the U.S. electric system. Vermont's fairly indicative of what's going on in the U.S. Since 1960, per capita electric consumption in the U.S. is tripled. if you think about all the advances in consumer electronics, if you think about all the advances in the control systems of manufacturing companies and industrial companies that are the heavy load users. I happen to live up in the Chittenden County area where IBM has a big manufacturing plant up there. Their load over the last 20 years has I think, almost doubled, while they are also at probably the top of the American corporate peak of energy consumption or energy efficiency programs. So they're using a heck of a lot more power year over year, even though they're saving power at a more efficient rate than anybody else. But the bottom line here is, the demand for electricity is going up and up. If you think about people getting into electric vehicles, this demand is just going to go up and up again. If electric vehicles become a significant alternative for transportation, that'll be another load onto the system. Outages, interestingly enough, three of the five largest blackouts in the U.S. have occurred in the last 10 years. Right? This is not a long ago phenomenon. This is a very recent phenomenon. It's because we're putting stress on a system that was not designed to handle the growth that is experiencing, and it's a system where we do not have the same level of technical controls and intelligent sensing and monitoring that we need to manage it responsibly. Power outages in the U.S. from an economic development standpoint, about $150 billion a year of negative impact due to those power outages. So when the lights go out, when the power goes off, whether it's in the residential neighborhood or whether it's in the small business or large industrial business sector, it has a serious impact. As we talked about, the grid is challenged. Dirty little secret of the grid. I think last year, GMP's average reliability rating, which is basically what percentage of the time the system was available, divided by the maximum number of hours it could have been available. Our efficiency or our reliability rating is it's like 99.75%, which is not the best utility in the country, but not the worst utility in the country. We're a little bit better than the average, but it's still 99.75%. That's a pretty high uptime. If you applied that same metric to the airline industry in terms of percentage of flights delayed or canceled, whatever, I mean they're running at like 60% right now. If you apply that to the U.S. automotive industry in terms of recalls or defects in manufacturing, they run at about 82% right now. So 99.75 is a really high percent, but it's not remarkable. One of the ways we do this in a system where we don't have a lot of intelligence on the system, and here's the dirty little secret, is we oversize everything. So if we're putting a new line down a road where a new development is going in, we know the load of the average house on that line. Let's say there's 150 homes that are going to be in that general area, and we're putting a line down that road. We run the numbers of what it will take to service those 150 or so homes with a good voltage and good reliability, and then we add a factor of 20 or 25% on top just to be safe. Because reliability is king in this business. We have to have a reliable system. Well, when you oversize things, you're installing assets that are more expensive than they need to be. So all of those costs get delivered right back in the form of rates. We do that because we don't have an alternative. If the sacrifice is reliability versus cost, we choose reliability because the local economy has come to expect 99.75% reliability from us. But if we had intelligence on that same line, we can size that system or that line much more appropriately, bring down the cost, and yet have the same level or even higher reliability. So that's where this whole concept of adding intelligence to our system comes in. And we're going to do that by installing what we call smart devices. Some of the devices will be in the substations, some of them will be in the form of meters that will sit on people's businesses and homes. But that's the intelligence we need to operate the system more effectively and more efficiently. I think that's good. So what we're talking about is that same picture. Little cartoon eyes just mean intelligent devices. So at the substation level, part of our program is installing electronics in our substation so that not only do we have more advanced controls of all of the things that are going on in the substation, but the substation is talking to us on literally a real-time basis. We know, let's say a substation has 5 or 6 distribution feeders. going out from it that are servicing local homes and businesses. That substation will tell us what's the voltage quality on that line, even at the last point on that line. It'll tell us what's the load on that line, and if we're hitting near peak spots. It'll talk to us about what's the transformer activity on that line. All of the electrical assets that go into delivering power to the home or business will be talking back to us so that we can orchestrate not only the appropriate level of power and voltage, but we'll also know if a neighbor in a neighborhood is going to add a solar installation onto their roof, and they're the 10th out of 20 neighbors in their neighborhood that want to do that, is that going to cause us any problems from a transformer or from a conduit standpoint? All of that intelligence is what's going to allow us to offer a more flexible grid so that people can interact with it the way they want, and yet we can control and have high quality reliability. So in the substations, what that is, at the customer level, this is the form of the meters. This is the thing that's one of the key elements to our plan, and this is the thing where there's some emerging controversy about what are the meters going to do, what won't they do, are they safe, and all that. The meters are basically, today most people have what we call an electromechanical meter on their house. It's a spinning disc meter, it's got some dials on it, meter readers come and they read the meters every other month, and then that's the basis for which we charge you for the electricity you've used. In the future, these meters will go into that exact same socket. They look almost identical, but there is more intelligence and more electronics in those meters. Those meters will not only tell us how much power is being used on shorter intervals, so we'll know, at 6 at night how much you've used, at 7 at night how much you've used, so you'll have more information about your energy patterns. But it will also tell us about the voltage quality. If you're the last house on the end of a distribution line and you've got some power quality issues, we'll know that and be able to adjust that proactively, as an example. We'll also know things like when the power goes out, you won't have to call us anymore. When the power goes out, the meter will signal to us, I'm losing power, and we'll get that message back in real time. So before you even realize the power is out in most cases, we will already be dispatching crews or people to try to isolate why that has happened and get the lights back on. So all of that stuff is enabled by the intelligence of these meters. And we'll talk about some of the issues around those meters and the technology being used. Question?
So I take it the meter readers won't be coming up the driveway?
That's right. That's right. The forward operating model for us is that the meter technology will communicate back to us. Therefore, the need to physically have a meter reader walk on the property. We call it, no more footprints in the snow is what we call it. The meter reader will not be doing that function anymore. Question?
In that case, one of the things that you do is keep an eye on the grid itself when they drive in. One of the things is to look out and see what's hanging there, what's the problem. What will replace that?
So we'll still have our what we call our local field reps in the local areas. These are the folks that actually, when we're making changes to the local system, they do all the design work. They're basically electrical engineers who decide where the poles are going to go, where the lines are going to run, and all that. So those folks will still be in the local area.
Will they be coming every month?
Yeah, part of their job is to survey the local system. They're probably not becoming as often as the meter readers, which were every month. But part of their job is they'll surveying the local system on a proactive basis, so they still have that presence. Okay? Another question?
You state the specific cost to customers, will that not be part of the advanced meter program?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a bit if you indulge me a little patience. Okay, moving along. So where did all this come about? So in 2008, as part of then President Bush's stimulus plan, there was a grant offering by the U.S. Department of Energy. And what they were doing was asking utilities to, as part of the recovery efforts to stimulate the economy, to accelerate their adoption of smart grid technology. And the carrot they held out to those utilities was, for every dollar you spend, we will match it dollar for dollar in terms of adopting these technologies. So Green Mountain Power, Central Vermont Public Service, and a bunch of the other distribution utilities in Vermont all got together and said, look, we are tiny fish in a really big pond on a national scale competing for these grants. Wouldn't it make sense for all of us to band together, come up with a common grant application that represented the statewide interests of Vermont, and submit that down to Washington? So that's what we did. It was a pretty aggressive program. It was about a $140 million proposal, representing, I think, 18 of the 22 utilities in the state. And basically we said, in some form or fashion, we will upgrade the technology we use to operate our systems, and we will basically accelerate 10 years of technology deployment and investment into about a 3-year period. And that's what we submitted down to Washington. It included upgrades to substations. It included upgrades to automated control switches out on the distribution lines so that we can sectionalize lines during outages much more quickly. And it included implementation of smart meters to a broad array of a broad swath of Vermont. We submitted that down, waited a few months, and we got back a very positive reaction from the Department of Energy. They basically approved our grant dollar for dollar. And we were on a per capita basis, the grant was the highest award of any in the nation. So we felt pretty good about that. The US DOE really liked our proposal and our program. So I think you can see there, it's a $138 million project awarded in 2010. So 69 million of that, which is half, will be supplied by the Department of Energy, and half will be supplied by the Vermont utilities. 20 utilities affected. And it's a 3-year project, mostly characterized by what we call grid automation, which is the substation and the distribution line automation work, as well as the smart meter work. Okay. So grid automation, this is what we talked about earlier. Substations are pretty complex things. They're the junction point where the high voltage lines bring power in to the local area. A bunch of transforming activities happen to step that power down into lower voltages that is safe to then send out to the distribution circuits that can deliver it to a home or a business on a local road. This is the area where if you're going to have outages and things based on mechanical failure, this is typically where these things fail. Vermont, GMP, Vermont in general, has not a great level of electronics and sensing and measuring equipment in their substations. By the end of this project, we will have pretty much state-of-the-art electronic measurement and sensing in all of our substations. It'll let us know real time when we're hitting dangerous peak loads. It'll allow us to bring on renewable sources. It will allow us to just do a lot more cost-effective things that will increase reliability and lower the cost of operating our system. So some of those benefits are right there: reducing outage time, more work done centrally. We'll have to roll fewer crews out to do substation work because we have automated controls in those substations. And again, near and dear to Vermont's heart, it really increases and opens up the opportunity to integrate renewable generating sources, whether they be at the residential level, very small at the residential level, or at the community scale level, where there might be a multi-acre solar farm or whatever it might be. Okay, this is the key to doing all that. And then the other big part is what we call advanced meters or smart meters. As I said earlier, same meter that will go on the side of your house that's there already, but it's got some intelligence in it. It can measure things in more real time. It can sense voltage drops and it will record voltage drops. And then most importantly, it can communicate information back to us on a regular basis without having to send anyone out there to read that meter. In the event of an outage, when your power goes out, it will send a signal back to us, and we'll know that ideally before you guys know it, so we can start deploying resources to fix that before you guys are even aware of it.
How are you going to recover the $69 million out of these rates?
It'll be, the $69 million is borne by the utilities, and it's just, just like we build, we have capital work that we do every year, whether it's building a new substation, replacing a substation, building new poles, replacing old poles, whatever it is. It gets rolled into that capital work over the 3-year period. For Green Mountain Power, the average annual rate increase based on our smart grid project will result in a 0.25 percentage point, or a 0.25% rate increase in each of those 3 years. So it's very small. relative to the benefits that the technology will deliver. Good question. So some of the benefits we talk about, there's just some, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that point. So you're saying that the amount of increase will be less than, it will be a quarter of 1%?
In the 3 years when we're doing the project, so 2010, 2011, actually 2011, 2012, 2013, yep, in each of those 3 years.
But you don't, but is that the rate increase we should expect, or is that just from the smart?
That's just from our smart grid programs. The other rate increase, the other elements that go into a rate increase include things like the New England. We get an allocation from the New England grid. It's a place called ISO New England, which is the regional grid operator for our transmission charges and things on a regional basis. So that's one element. There's a bunch of elements that go into what ultimately makes the rate increase, but the smart grid piece over that 3 years is about a 0.25% in each of those 3 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how someone could actually look at their bill and decide whether it's gone up or not. And then,
You'll know, you can know the way you empirically
because
know.
what I'm hearing is that I'm getting a very mixed message from people that solve these things as to whether they've actually saved any money or not. So it's really, I'm just trying to pin you down to get some way of assessing whether it's actually less or not.
It has. Let me put it this way. There's a, and this is probably going to sound like a roundabout answer, and I don't mean it to, but it's the best I can do to explain it because it's hard to pin it down. There are a number of variables that go into what the rate increase will be in any given year. Some of it has to do with just power supply markets or the electric market in general, transmission tariffs, a lot of things outside a utility's control, like Green Mountain Power. There's some things directly in our control, like how expensive are our labor costs, programs like the Smart Grid program in any given year, and things like that. So the way you can kind of empirically know on your bill whether the rates have gone up is you're charged a per kilowatt hour charge right now if you're a residential customer. We modify our rates once a year. And it's always with regulatory approval of the Department of Public Service and the Public Service Board. So, a couple of years ago, our residential rate, I think, was in like 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Today, it's somewhere in the mid-14s, I think. So we've had an increase because of regional activity, and that's that's the best way I can explain it. That's the way you know. Okay. But in the next 3 years, this particular program will contribute, a 0.25%, which is very small, relative to the benefits it will deliver over that 3-year period and beyond.
Right. I'm wondering why the choice for wireless was made over hardwired, because wireless has many health effects that have been seen in other places, other states where they've been deployed. California, for example, I'll just read a short article that came out that talks about what people have experienced where these meters have been installed. This is Santa Cruz, California.
So I've got a whole thing on the health stuff, which I think is a really important issue.
Okay.
If we can get through the base facts and we can turn back to that, if that would be okay.
From what I've heard, though, as far as like the rates and how you set them, you raise the rates are higher at peak hours. So, for example, when people normally cook dinner, that's my understanding of what I've heard thus far. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But in other words, the popular times when people tend to use energy, which is in the morning when they're having a shower or at night when they're cooking, that those rates are going to be more expensive. Is that the case?
No. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is get through just the facts of our program, and then that's a great policy question. It's how you implement policy on top of the technology. We'll circle back to that, the health things, and have a full dialogue on that, if that's okay. Great. Questions back?
I have a question relative to your upgrading the system electronically. Should we understand that in addition to the smart metering, is that going to be sort of the tail end of the dog that essentially the substations are going to be the first line to upgrade electronically so you can track it in sort of a mass, exodus of electricity, and then it's going to filter down to individual consumer use?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting way to think about it. We're in the midst of doing our substation upgrades right now. GMP's got about 60 or so substations in the state. We got through by the end of September, so just 6 weeks ago, we were through about 15 of those in terms of the upgrades we're doing. We'll do the next 45 over the next 18 months or so. And so at that, if you think of the electrical systems as the circulatory system, right? Those are the major veins and artery junction points are where the substations are. That'll give us a lot of controls, measurement, and sensing at the substation level, and then the meters will take it out to the capillaries and give us all of that additional intelligence and control and benefit out further out beyond the substation. Okay. Yeah.
Just a quick, what percentage of your grant, of these hardware grants, was directed towards the substations versus the meters?
I think, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, for GMP, we probably, probably 60 to 65% of our grant was the meters, and the rest was around the substation and some supporting software systems that are needed to operate the things. Yep, it's Paul. So as we talked about, some of the benefits of the meters, right, we will save $1 million of operating costs each year, right off the top, just by switching from a manual meter reading setup to a automated meter reading setup. So when you look at the cost of labor, you look at the cost of the vehicles to drive the meter readers around, you look at the software systems to collect the data from the handheld systems that the meter readers use. All of that stuff together will result in about $1 million a year of reduced operating costs. That reduced operating cost flows right back to customers in the terms of lower rates or keeping rates as low as they can be. So that's a direct savings. That's not a profit to the utilities at all. Yes?
Can you tell me how many positions in your company will be gotten rid of as a result of getting rid of meter readers and operators?
Yep. Yep. So
these are jobs that my friends and neighbors have that they will not have.
Yep. So today GMP has about, I think the number's about, we've got about 16 meter readers in our company. 10 of those meter readers will be transitioned to different jobs because when you put in these types of technologies, you're creating new job types in the organization. So they'll be retrained, retained, and deployed into new positions. There will be about 6 to 8 meter readers that the positions will be eliminated and not replaced.
So that's basically 16 positions will be eliminated or changed.
Yeah, if you want to think of it that way. So out of the 16, 6 or so will be eliminated. The other 10 will be transitioned into new roles.
There's a difference between job loss and position loss.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at is that there are people who are going to lose jobs.
Yeah, when you automate a manual process, there's typically some disruption of the workforce. For us, it's 6 out of 16. Go.
I have to say, just to add to that, I live in an area where the CDPS is the utility company, and I was talking to a couple of meter readers, and they said, and they're not actually the meter readers. They are other workers that do maybe installations and things of that nature. But they said that CDPS couldn't get rid of them fast enough, and that they were planning to bring in temporary workers for Bennington to install the smart meters there. So it's like they're just using this whole changeover, I guess, as a means to oust, long-time workers. Now, maybe that's not, your I don't know, but that's what these guys said.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that characterization. It's analogous.
Temp workers in the Bennington area?
Not to we're using contract companies to do the meter replacements. So in our situation, we've got 95,000 meters in our service territory. We do not have the staff to change all of those meters out in a 12-month period. We physically cannot do it. So we've contracted with a company to supplement our staff to get through that, and we'll actually do it in 10 months. So that's a one-time sweep through where we'll do the meter change-outs. Otherwise, it would take us 3 years to get done if we use that with all. That's the temporary staff that they're talking about.
Are you saying that that's actually additional employment for a period of time?
For a period of time, locally. Yep. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is, will create jobs. There will be some job loss. It's like when you automate any process, when you automate any element of manufacturing, what was previously manual labor, you automate it, it goes away, or it gets retrained into doing higher level jobs, which is, like out of our meters, we will convert some meter readers to now become software system administrators, which is a higher hourly rate, higher skilled job, but they've got to go through a retraining to do. Yeah.
In contacting the Smart Meter Association of America, which is the trade group that makes smart meters, in asking where these are made, one company makes them in South Carolina, and one company makes them in China. Can you assure us that 100% of your meters will be American made, so those jobs will continue?
Our meter manufacturer assembles its meters in North Carolina.
Okay. Yes, I suppose that's Itron, West Union.
No, the manufacturer we're using is a company called Elster.
Elster, okay.
Yep. Their manufacturing headquarters is in North Carolina. That's where they do all their assembly. Yep. Yes, sir.
Question back to meters. In the RF is going to be over the wire, impulse over the wire, or is it going to be just pure one?
It's a wireless technology. It does not go over the wire.
What effect will the sunspots, which are coming in, we're all well aware that they're coming in radio work? I install wireless devices in other fields, electrical, and not electrical, but security. And we're all aware and wondering what's going to happen when one of the interruptions occurs.
The solar activity? Yeah. So, a lot of these technologies have been installed in a utility setting for, the early adopter systems have been out there 10 years, the wireless ones. And there has not been any documentation of significant disruption. No guarantee for the future, but to date it's been a very stable technology. Yes, sir.
I'd like just a little bit of clarification on this $1 million of savings. Is that figure projected on the fact that everybody changes out to a smart meter, or how does that figure arrive at?
So the budget we have, or the annual cost we have to read meters is, I forget the exact number, but when we look at what our cost to read meters will be after this technology is deployed and up and operating, it'll be $1 million less than it is under the current model where we're manually reading most of those meters.
And that would be 100% compliance with everybody having smart meters?
No, that factors in some small percentage of folks electing to not have a smart meter installed. Okay. We've modeled it that way.
So based upon that, though, I think your next statement was this would be a savings, for the customers for Green Mountain Power.
Yep.
How does that really translate in real time? Does that mean our rates won't go up as fast, as they normally would? Well, because I can't anticipate the fact that I'm going to go to my mailbox and see a check from Green Mountain Power with my name on it.
No, it translates it translates into rates. And so if in a two-year period, right, let's just speak hypothetically, our operating costs were exactly the same minus the change out in meters, then you would see a rate decrease because we would be $1 million less expensive to operate our business in that year. In normal years, as I said earlier, there's a variety of factors that go into what the rates will be. Okay, it's regional New England issues, it's the wholesale electric markets, it's a lot of things, some of which are beyond our control. And so in any given year, that will dictate whether the reality of it is, I'll come get that, the reality of it is a rate decrease, a rate flat dynamic, or a rate increase as low as it can be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that addresses the issue. So let me just seek one little bit more clarification. So you're saying that in order to achieve this $1 million savings, that would be at the end of whatever period that the smart meter installation, minus the people who opt out. You won't see that until that time frame. What was the time frame?
No, you'll start seeing increments of it as we deploy. It's not a factor that we have to wait until the final meter is installed before some of our savings are accomplished. So you'll start to see that a little bit. But once we get through the project and we're fully up and operational and transition to the new technology, our cost of metering will be $1 million less than it has been historically under a manual meter reading model.
So in a perfect world, what kind of time frame are you looking at? A year, year and a half?
We'll be done with our meter deployments in early 2013. Yep, first quarter of 2013, calendar quarter.
One more question. I heard an interview on BPR News with John Dillon, it was I think last week, and it was titled "Smart Grid Debate: Co-ops Take Hardwire Over Wireless to Cut Costs." And the gist of that was all the advantages. Well, let me just quote Avram Pack, who is the president of Washington County Electric Co-op. And essentially he says, I'm not trying to get into a debate with the choices that other utilities make, because actually it's like the third and fifth largest, electricity utility companies in Vermont have chosen to do this hardwire, which eliminates a lot of problems that people have issues with. Anyway, he says, this is Pat, I'm not trying to get into a debate with the choices that other utilities made. For our utility, which is the most rural in the state and is almost overwhelmingly residential, even the sellers of radio frequency technology told us that it didn't make sense to go with that. Well, most of Vermont is very rural and hilly and residential. I mean, that's the majority of our state is functions that way. That's how it is. That's the way it's laid out. So, to me, the choice to use wireless is just, really, I don't understand how, without building out a huge infrastructure, which seems to me is perhaps the goal behind the choice of wireless smart meters, that essentially you want the 4G network for telecommunications and other industries that perhaps will bring revenue to the state through taxes or what have you. I mean, because it doesn't make sense to choose wireless in a region that's so mountainous and hilly and residential, because the density for radiation, the microwave radiation, RF frequency to travel through so much to reach its target has to be overwhelmingly powerful. Just like when you use a cell phone, in a remote area, the signals have to be much stronger, to get through, which means it's more damaging. And so, from everything I've read, also the privacy and security issues are no longer, there to the same degree when you have hardwired, because you don't have, the hacking capabilities and stuff that could occur when things are wireless. There's just so many advantages. You have the existing infrastructure already, the phone lines, or fiber optic, perhaps the Fairpoint. It's cheaper. It's just on every single front, hardwired would have been the way to go. Unless there's some ulterior motive with the 4G,
No, there's no ulterior motive. I've been in high technology for 25 years. I've studied smart grid and smart meters for 3 years before we made this decision. And the way you've characterized it is just not accurate. There is all of the latest AMI vendor technology is moving to wireless. The wireline system's perfectly sound technology. The problems with them are they're incredibly slow, and they have very little bandwidth to move information back and forth. So when I look at this system, I'm building a 20-year investment because I don't want to have to come back to my customers 5, 6, 7 years from now and say, remember that system I put in that cost me, however many millions, tens of millions of dollars. I bought a slower kind of disadvantaged technology, and I got to redo the whole thing. So here we go again. I'm buying a 20-year investment, and when I look at the attributes of a 20-year investment, it's got to have future-proofing around speed and data transfer rate, because I can't predict what types of capabilities we're going to want to use on behalf of our customers over this system in 20 years from now. So this technology gives me the best chance of future-proofing this system decision for a 20-year run. The power line carrier technology, I can tell you, one of the companies you're talking about started installing it back in 2004, 2005. They're just finishing up their installation now. They've had a very good experience, and they're already planning for their next generation, and it will be wireless. Okay?
Which company is that?
I'm not gonna. I don't talk about other companies.
Well, I haven't heard that. I'm just curious.
Okay.
But all of that anyway, so I was just going to say it's hypothetical, really, about the future, and what, how you take
Technology, there's nothing hypothetical about.
And then ask questions. Can we let him speak?
Sure.
And then ask
Did you have a question?
Yeah, the smart meter is going to communicate wirelessly. How far is it going and where is it going to? Going to the substation, or
So the way the meters work are, the meters basically have a transmitter in them that is about like a baby monitor. It's a 900 megahertz spectrum that it uses, and the meters can actually talk to each other to kind of leapfrog data point to point to point. There will be a collector on a utility pole somewhere in the vicinity of the neighborhood where these meters are.
So this is a mesh.
It's a mesh, exactly. And then the collector on the pole has a cellular signal or cellular transition into it that will then talk to the public network with encryption and all of that.
So it's a very low power 900 mesh.
Yep. And we can talk about it. I mean, I've got a chart for those of you that have concerns over these devices. One of the things that has come up which is concerning to me, is the recent dialogue on these systems has taken on a little bit of an alarmist tone, and I just think everyone should have a choice about this, and that's why we are offering, as you can see on the bottom there, we are offering a customer opt-out program. If the customer does not want to receive one of these meters, not a problem. You sign a document just telling us that that's your decision, and you will not receive a meter. Now, there is a surcharge for that because we still will have to send meter readers out to your place to physically read your manual meter. And there is a regulatory principle that says unique costs that are created by individuals should not be shared by all customers. So for $10 a month, which is by far the cheapest opt-out rate in the country right now, Vermont's got the most progressive opt-out policy in terms of no requirements and the lowest cost in terms of $10 a month. That's so other people don't have to pay for certain individuals' decisions. But what concerns me is just the alarmist tone of this thing. These technologies are well below any FCC safety levels. They've been below it from as far back as the earliest in the 60s levels that the FCC put out. They do give off RF, but it's literally in the range of a baby monitor, and they only communicate once every 4 to 6 hours. So the cumulative effect of these devices is, I don't want to understate it for folks, because I know there are folks that may have health issues related to RF, and I don't want to diminish the importance of that, because that's absolutely real stuff. But for the majority of people that are not impacted in those unique ways, these devices, if you've got one of these in your pocket for the last 10 minutes, you've already surpassed a year's worth of smart meter exposure just by having that. So I want to put this thing on the right scale. But at the end of the day, we take this stuff seriously. We don't judge the science behind it, because the science is very divided. You can have very credible researchers that say this is an issue. You have very credible researchers that say this is absolutely not an issue. And the science has been going on for 40 years on this stuff, and it's still very divided. But the scale of this stuff, in my opinion, is very small. I can show you some charts that kind of put it into proportion. But what's concerned me lately is there's an alarmist tone to some of these, to some of the folks that have concerns about this. That's why we created the opt-out. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it, very simply. We want to be flexible and give people a choice.
For those that would choose to opt out, now our meters are read right now every other month.
Correct.
And estimated in between.
Yes.
So would we only pay the $10 every other month?
No, we've levelized the rate. We've levelized the surcharge for the year, so it's every month you pay that.
Cost of doing business. You can't add that on.
Well, this is the theory behind it. So you may agree, you may choose not to agree. Once we make this switch over, so before we make this switch over today, our normal operating procedure is that we have meter readers go out and read the meters. So that service is included in your customer charge on your bill. In the future, we will have a new technology that will not require us to have meter readers go out and do it. That function and the cost behind that function will be handled by the technology. So for customers that opt out, where we do have to deploy and send out meter readers to read their meters, which we're happy to do, there is an additional cost to that we otherwise would not incur. And so it would not be right to have all the customers pay that on behalf of the customers that choose to opt out. Therefore, the $10 a month is assigned to the customers that choose to opt out. It's a very consistent regulatory principle it's just like, I'll give you an example. When a new home is built, the cost of adding what we call a line extension to deliver power to that home is borne by the person building that home. It's not socialized across the entire customer base because that unique cost is to provide service to that new customer. It's the exact same principle. It's very consistent. Yes, sir.
What are your projections on post-uptime? Factor that into your projections?
Yeah, I mean, we estimate it'll be, I mean, we're guessing, so we think it'll be somewhere in the 2% range. We've seen some jurisdictions in other parts of the country where it's as low as literally 0.1%, and we've seen some as high as maybe 4 to 5%. That's basically the range we've seen, so we've kind of split it down the middle. Yes, sir.
This $10 per month fee, at what point could we expect to see that $10 fee if you choose to opt out, go to 15 or 20 or 25 or whatever?
Right now, we don't see increasing that fee right now. I can't say that'll be forever, but right now the policy is flat $10 a month. I don't, and no kind of inflation-based increase.
There's nothing in writing that says it's locked in for a period of time.
No, there's not. So that would be, if that's feedback you wanted to give to us and to the Department of Public Service, that would be helpful feedback.
Is this a good opportunity to talk about new dynamic price plans?
Sure. Sure. So with the technology, so today, how many people, as a residential customer, if you're GMP customers, you're all on a flat rate, right? It doesn't matter if you use power midnight, noontime, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, you pay the exact same per kilowatt hour charge, right? That's the rate I'm on. The challenge with that is there's no incentive to be efficient in your use of energy. It doesn't matter when, if you use power at the hottest summer day when power prices are as high as they can be on the New England market, you pay the same rate as if you're using it at 4 in the morning on a cool fall evening when power prices are very low, right? So there's no incentive to align behavior with cost. And part of that reason is the meters, they're dumb meters, right? We don't know when you use power. We just know at the end of 30 days how much you've used since the last time we checked. The new meters will be able to offer more creative pricing that customers can elect to do. All of this stuff is optional, right? If you want to keep your flat rate, you can keep your flat rate. I, for example, will be interested in getting into a time differentiated rate where nighttime prices are lower than daytime prices. I will work with my family. I've got 3 young kids, so it'll be quite a struggle, but I'll work with my family to move as much of our energy use to, say, after 10 o'clock in the evening or before 8 o'clock in the morning. And we may use it, doing the dishes on timers or doing the clothes dryer on timers, so that I can get a discount on the cost of power that I use versus doing it at noontime, and where I'll have to pay more. So a lot of this technology will enable these types of rates. We're working with the Department of Public Service now to develop policy around what some of these rates might be. One of the overreaching guidelines we're getting throughout all this is these rates options will be exactly that. They'll be optional. Customers will be able to elect into them, but they will not be forced onto them by any means. But then it will give us the ability to offer more flexible rate options so people can, by modifying their behaviors, hopefully save money.
Some similarity to off-peak water heating.
Exactly the same. We actually think one of the emerging technologies at the residential level is storage. So whether it's heat storage or literally electric storage, by putting these devices in your home and offering time differentiated pricing, overnight you could charge your storage unit at low cost, and then during the day run your home off of that low cost power when prices are higher, so that you're avoiding all of that cost, and then do the same thing the next night. That's part of the future of what we think residential energy management will be.
Are you saying that I've been running my washing machine and dryer late at night, that I've had no saving at all?
Unless you're on, if you happen to be, there are some, are you a GMP customer?
No.
Are you a CDPS customer? You may be on a time differentiated rate. They have a legacy rate from many years ago that's been islanded and fixed. Not sure if you're on that or not, so I can't say that yes or no. But if you're on a flat rate and you're running your dryer late at night to save money, you haven't been saving money. But so your bill will tell you that.
Can I play devil's advocate with you for a second? Why would I need to spend $160 $9 million to tell me I should do my watch at night. I mean, it would seem to me that any kind of logic would tell people, especially if we go to a time-based energy system, the logic would say probably 3 o'clock in the morning is going to be less than 3 o'clock in the afternoon without paying for a home grid. I realize there's a ton of good reasons for a smart grid. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying this particular point doesn't kind of make sense to me. It seems as though we could aggregate our monthly bills, take a look if they were done on a time basis, when it's cheap and when it's expensive, and take action on our own without having to meter tell us.
Yep. Well, to me, this is the first step in many steps to do more innovative and creative ways to drive efficiencies into the system. So let's take it to the next step, or even 3 steps later, which is there will be the technological ability. And again, whether customers choose to utilize it or not will be completely up to them. But in the future, there will be the technological opportunity where I can put you on a rate that says, on the hottest peaking day, the meter you have on the side of your house will be able to also communicate to your thermostat, or your air conditioner, or your refrigerator, or your basement freezer. And on the hottest peaking summer day, you may be at a rate that says, if you allow me to cycle your basement freezer off for an hour at a time during that hottest peak day, during certain hours, I'll give you either a discount or a rebate, because in aggregate, if I can get 1,000 people like you on that rate, I'll be able to lower my overall load at that time as a utility, which will save a lot of money when the New England market prices, spot market prices, are super high. That is an incredible savings in aggregate, but without that type of control, and again, the control would only be implemented with the customer's blessing. With that type of control, now I'm even more sophisticated in my ability to drive energy savings out of the equation, which again, will keep rates as low as they possibly can be.
And I think that's the essence of the whole radio frequency-based, wireless or wire-based. Because in a wireless technology, you have smart appliances, you have communications in real time, with zillions of devices to better control your energy. And then you can report to a device on a telephone pole that has enough bandwidth to handle it.
Right.
But I think that's kind of the essence of the whole.
Right. But again, many times when I say things like I just said, people think, oh my goodness, the utility's going to come control my appliances. No, 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 no. No one will touch your appliances without your consent and your blessing and your signing up and saying, this is what I would like to do, and it would only be on very strict terms. There's also this big brother connotation that's getting associated with some of these devices, which is just not accurate. And so I cannot stress enough, this is all on a voluntary basis. Nothing will happen without the customer's consent.
If everybody come up with more surcharges if they decide not to participate in some of these programs?
Very unlikely. Only if we have to send a meter reader out to turn your refrigerator down.
Do I anticipate you at some point looking at individual homeowners' usage and suggesting ways to save power?
Good, exactly. Both in a face-to-face format, but also we'll have websites where you can log in, see your usage. Actually, I got a picture of one where you can see your usage of what you've done, literally yesterday, what your usage was yesterday, the day before, the day before, the day before, and the website will help you walk through, your power usage is this, and as a result of being on your rate,
You'll be able to log on your own account
yes,
and look at your usage.
and you'll be able to model your usage against different rate programs to see which one gets you the best value. Yeah? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I understand the advantages of this smart metering for you. It's very clear the costs would be much more manageable. You can buy less, all that. I can't quite figure it out for me what it does. I have instruments already all through my house that tell me when I'm using electricity. I turn them on and take a look. And they're called light bulbs. And I know when I'm using electricity. I think most of us do know. Probably like even more. I don't understand ultimately one of the scientific principles that your company is up against is that lowering cost for the individual does not produce, it does not make savings just because we can get cheaper or less, more incremental costs. We just go out and buy more electronic toys. We don't actually serve. In ways, actually, I'm kind of lucky because I use stimulus money not to get rid of jobs, but to buy solar panels. So one of the great things about putting solar panels on your house is you spend a lot of time thinking about how much you're using, because it's really fun to go out and watch your meter go backwards. And anybody who puts in a meter, who puts in solar power, will tell you that the great savings comes from that understanding and that awareness. So I'm just not sure how this smart meter impacts my life substantially. I do know that I'm willing to pay that $10 a month that saves a job for an American worker.
Okay, so your solar example is a great one. Without having this technology, we will at some point have to put a cap on how many customers like you can put panels on their roof and spin their meter backwards. We would have to put a cap on it because at a certain level of penetration, we would risk destabilizing our system because there's too many distributed sources coming onto it, and the cap's lower than you think. It's too low, and so we want to have people have those choices. We want to have people be free to, have the experience you just described. But we can only do it by having the sensing and the intelligence on our system that will allow us to open it up safely and maintain reliability while we increase the number of people that are having that distributed generation experience you just described. So that's just one element. This is a really rudimentary view of what a website looks like. You sound like you're a fairly astute consumer of energy, someone who understands energy and energy use pretty well. You're probably the top 1 to 2% of folks who get it. Yeah, you are.
We all turn on it. We all know we
But the way you think about electricity, I'd say you're definitely on the higher range of someone who is involved and engaged and thinking about it. For all the people in Vernon that were invited to this meeting, you all showed up. For every one of you, there's probably 50 to 100 who didn't show up, who could care less. Those are the folks who are disengaged. They don't have the time, they don't have the energy, they don't have the interest, which is fine. But we need to be able to make progress on our energy goals in spite of folks that don't have the time to be engaged and thoughtful like you are. And that's a part of what's going on here. Yeah.
2 times in the past year or 2 years, Green Mountain Power has that in the bill every month. You've got the grid that shows your power usage every month or every other month. Well, it's red. Twice my electricity was through the roof. And I'm like, what's wrong? And if that hadn't happened, I didn't have that. I mean, obviously, my bill goes from $100 to $58. But I'm potentially seeing with the smart meter where I would know, hey, the horse's fence is rounding out. Okay, my refrigerator is no longer working properly. I mean, we're all trying to control, or I'm trying to control my costs. And every time the meter is red and I see the grid, I'm like, okay, now what can I do?
Right.
I mean, I can see when you said you can go on the computer and look for the past 4 hours or 6 hours or something like that, Okay, I can go out and I can turn off the fence and say, that was grounding out. I mean, I'm thinking.
But that's when you first provide people with more information and more granular data about their energy use, that's the experience that happens. They start thinking, the wheels start turning, and they start having ideas. 2 years ago, I installed on my house a clip-on monitor onto my dumb meter that was a sensor that would just project into my home on a little display what the current kWh that was running through the meter was, right? It would just tell me I think there was a 10-second delay. So I'd come home at night after work, family would be all there, and this thing would be humming right along. So I'd go, And it was fun with my kids. I'd say, hey, I bet you the light in your room is on. No, Dad, no way, Dad. I turned it off because I'm always on the kids about turning the lights off when we leave a room. And so they thought I was Nostradamus, right? I just knew stuff. And they'd go up, and he'd come down, yeah, you were right, Dad. How do you know that? I was like, I don't know, buddy. And then finally we used it as an educational tool, and they started to get it. But when you see the information, you're going to do something about it. So that's it's one of the many benefits of this stuff. There are benefits to this that we don't even know what they are going to be yet until we get people using it on a regular basis and incorporating it into their routines.
I think if they're going to ensure people of their privacy.
Good point. So privacy is another big issue, right? So today, we are compelled to not share any customer information, whether it's who they are, where they live, or how much electricity they use. The only time we share that is under court order and subpoena. That's the only time we are authorized to share it. We use that information to do operations. We use it to do billing, and we use it to do, on an anonymous basis, to do our load profiles and our forecast planning and our energy buying. In the future, we'll have more data about energy usage, but the same rules apply. Okay? Only time that information would be shared is under a court order subpoena. That is the absolutely only time it would ever be shared. We will use the data, like you said, for operations and to do load forecasting and all the things that we do routinely anyway. We'll just have a lot better data to do it on. And then in terms of cybersecurity and people hacking into the meters, anytime you open up a system with electronic intelligence, you are absolutely putting out the opportunity for someone to hack in. I'm not going to try to lie to that. There is absolutely no foolproof system in the world, right? Department of Defense, NASA, CIA, everybody has a vulnerability. There's no such thing as a system without vulnerability. What I can tell you is the technologies we're using are constantly being evaluated and are operating to the highest standards of security that have been established by the Department of Energy. And Vermont was very lucky in getting grant monies to work with an organization called Sandia National Labs. They're one of the 9 national research labs. Sandia specializes in Department of Defense cybersecurity research. They have been collaborating with Vermont for the last year and a half on all of our security setups of our systems, from the meter all the way back to the software systems that manage the meters. So while I can never say that the system is 100% foolproof, I can definitely say with credibility, we are doing a very good job and a very diligent job of setting these systems up the way they should be set up with the best known levels of security that are available today.
Which is what?
It's the state of the art that's out there. It's what the DOE recommends. There's a whole bunch of different standards. I could bore you to death with a bunch of acronyms, but it's alphabet soup. Yes?
Would that be, when you say, as far as the privacy issue, selling information, just for the sake of the term, is that federal or is that state by state? Because it sounded like, from what I had been reading, that there were states in the Midwest or the West, Texas was one, that other agencies were able to use this information to, the power companies were giving out this information to pretty much anyone who wanted to do so.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of that. One of the big differences, Texas is what we call a deregulated market. So the company that owns the poles and wires is different than the company who sells you your power. Vermont is a fully regulated market where Green Mountain Power owns the poles and wires and we're selling you the power. In a deregulated market, what they call the power marketers, which are the non-poles and wires companies, there has been some issues about them exchanging information. Vermont does not have that issue, and at a state level, we have a statute that protects the customer information that utilities manage and use and collect as a routine part of operations. So.
I thought we were all deregulated.
No, we're fully regulated. Vermont is fully regulated.
So if somebody like Google says we have this free deal to give you, and as long as you sign up with, they can access that power information, power profile.
No, you'd have to give them consent to do that. Nope.
I have to give them consent.
And then they'd have to have a relationship with the utility to share that information, but only with your consent. We would never do it without your consent.
Are these meters smart enough to tell me what particular part of my house is consuming more electricity than another, like a washing machine or this one?
No, the meter doesn't know anything about what's going on the other side of the wall. The meter just looks at the house as a single unit, but you'll be able to, you know, like what I did with that sensor I had, right? I knew if I came into the house and it was running at a certain load, flip the electric clothes dryer on, you could see the thing just go. Those electric clothes dryers, awesome machines.
Will those be available to the general public?
Well, your meter will be able to.
No, not the meter, the device you're talking about.
Yeah, you'll be able. We think this is future, but we think in the next couple of years they'll become a commodity item that you'll be able to pick up at Best Buy or Circuit City or whatever. They're not a commodity item right now. They're very proprietary in the way they interact with the meter. But we think it'll become an open standard in like a Best Buy in the next 2 to 3 years. Yes, sir.
2 questions. Are you going to be rolling out a time of day rate along the meters, and are you going to have load shedding capabilities?
So we do not have plans to have, we don't have a date to have load shedding capabilities at the residential level yet. We've had loads, we call it demand response or load control. We've had those arrangements with some of our larger commercial and industrial customers for years. But we do not have an implementation plan to have that at the residential level yet. That's something we'll be working on in the out years. I can't imagine having that in place for probably another 3 years. And then your first question was a time of day rate, right? We plan to introduce a residential time, we call it a time of use rate, which will be a simple, day, evening, differentiated rate, sometime in the latter half of 2012. Yep. And again, it'll be optional. Customers will elect into it. If they don't want it, they don't have to have it.
Just one little question about, you said something to the effect too many distributed systems would disrupt the system. Like the smart grid system, if you have like solar feeding in.
Not the smart grid system, the electrical system.
Electrical.
Yeah, so if there was a 200 home neighborhood today and every one of those homes wanted to put panels on its roof, we got a problem. Can't do it. It's too much variable load on one circuit. So with smart grid, not sure we could get to the full 200, but we get a heck of a lot more homes onto that circuit safely with high reliability than we could today. So today we have to cap it at, like, if there's 200 homes, we have to cap it at 40, no more than 40. With smart grid in place, we could probably take it up to somewhere north of 150. That's why, without this technology, the adoption of micro generation and micro renewables, it's going to be a lot slower and a lot more painful than with this technology.
What if all this money had been used towards, building solar panels or creating these hydroelectric projects? Wouldn't that have been a more productive means, for really creating an energy plant that doesn't impact the environment, human health, the way a technology that is constantly emitting microwave radiation?
It doesn't constantly emit. As I said earlier, these meters emit once every 4 to 6 hours.
I've seen studies that say very different things, that they fluctuate. One may emit that amount, but others may.
So I can give you the technology we're using. It emits every 4 to 6 hours. That's why it's again, in my comments earlier, and I don't want to turn this into a debate. I don't want to turn this into a debate, but there's some very misleading information being said that there is.
I think that's offensive to call people alarmists when
I don't think it's at all. When I see the information that's flowing through, and the information is not intended to educate. The information is intended to actually polarize the argument. I just don't see the productivity in that. Yes, sir? Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so here's another view of a web experience with a customer. You can see, to your point earlier, one of the things we'll be able to do is you can set yourself up with a monthly kind of budget amount, so that at the midpoint, so let's say you want your bill to be $100 a month, that's where you think it should be. At the 2-week mark of the month, it can show you, so far you've spent $60, so you're $10 ahead of where you thought you were going to be, and that can lead to investigations and things like that, or you're $20 to the good on it, and your efficiency activities have been paying off and paying dividends for you. So there's, there'll be a lot of flexibility around just your interaction, the amount of information you'll have available to you. And again, most people don't get excited by kWh, kilowatt per hour information and things like that. But once you start seeing your information in this format, you'll start to recognize patterns in your behaviors. You'll recognize other things. There's a ton of stories anecdotally, nationally about parents finding out that their teenage kids were using their house for parties on weekends when they thought they were away and things like that. And that's the information, right? So, but again, it'll be your information. It'll be secure. You'll be the only one to have access to it. Okay, go down, John. So just to wrap it up, timelines, right? We started our substation work in July, and that'll run through January of 2013. As I said, we've completed about 15 of our 60 subs in terms of the overhaul and the upgrades to all the electronics and sensing. We're doing work on the distribution circuits. That's sectionalizers and reclosers that we open up and shut during outage events. If a tree falls over on a line today, we may have to go in and once we remove the tree, we have to close that fuse. The fuse is a safety protection. But we do that today by rolling a truck out there and having a guy with a stick close the fuse in. In the future, we clear the line, and we're not rolling a truck. We have automated devices that allow us to do that. The meters will start in December. We'll actually start in the Westminster area. Will be our first area that we'll sweep through. And then we think by, right now it'll be about a year, December of 2012, we'll be completed with our service territory. As I said earlier, summer, fall of 2012 for that first dynamic rate, that's basically the time of use rate, the day and night rate for residential customers. And the customer portal or the website we saw, we're looking at fall, winter of 2012 to have that out and available to customers who have the meters at that point. Yes, sir?
With the new meters, the mechanical meter right now, as they get older, less accurate readings.
It's slow.
So at some point when you swap out that meter, some people may realize an actual increase in their bill because now they're getting an actual measurement of what they're using.
There has been some incidents. We've done some spot testing of our meters, and they've tested out pretty accurate to the electromechanicals. But in some areas, if you've got a 30-year-old electromechanical, we've got some meters out there that are over 30 years old, they do slow down. It's metal on metal. There is some incidents where a more accurate reading will pop the bill a little bit, but we won't try to collect the past due on this low meter, of course. Electric humor there. We do test them. We do test them, and they come in very, very similar to the electromechanical, so the accuracy is pretty good. Yeah. Yes, sir.
You talked about there was a snow came down on the telephone pole or something. Came over and knocked the line down. If you're implementing mesh network, how many mesh meters does one data collection device on the pole talk?
It just depends on the proximity. A single collector can manage up to about 5,000 meters.
So if one of those goes, it's a lot worse than.
No. If one of those goes,
so if you lost a pole that had 5,000 meters on it, it was collecting, the results of 5,000 mesh meters.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be?
No, because the meters can hold themselves. They'll store up to 90 days worth of information themselves, and it knows when it's successfully transferred information out. So if we lost one of those collectors,
right.
As soon as we realize
it
may reroute to another, or if let's say it takes us a day to replace that collector, once it's back online, those let's say it's 4,000 meters, will resync and then update everything since then. So you're not losing data. It's just waiting to make the transfer until that point. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just the technical aspect of it. You said that it only talks to the mesh every 4 to 6 hours. How does that allow you to know instantly that my power is on?
So under normal operating conditions, every 4 to 6 hours it'll chirp out and make itself known to the collector. If there's an outage event, the outage event goes immediately. So normal operating procedures 4 to 6 hours. And then in the future, as we talked about, if you were a customer who said, "Tell you what, I'll let you for a certain rate and a certain incentive, I'll let you lower my thermostat 3 degrees under certain conditions, right? Or my air conditioning 3 degrees, not that there's much residential air conditioning in Vermont.
There's no date.
Maybe.
Global warming.
Yeah. But when we did, if you gave us authorization to do that control event, when the time came to do that control event, the meter would activate and would talk again. So it's under normal operating procedures, 4 to 6 hours. But if there's other events on top of that, there's communication. Yeah.
Is the smart meter
Say that again?
They took the surge protector off my house. Is the smart meter compatible?
We would not have replaced your smart meter yet. We haven't put in.
Is that why the surge protector had to come off? Or is the smart meter?
I don't think so. No, the smart meter fits literally in the exact same socket, in the exact same box. I mean, it's a pop out and pop in. I don't know. We can follow up the offline on that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
You're talking about the smart meters, leapfrogging and talking to each other, then finally going to a collector. What kind of proximity and housing location do you need? In some places where we live, the only way we know our neighbor's home is see smoke going through the woods. You can't actually see the house. So my question goes directly to the fact of how far apart will these meters talk to each other before a collector, they have to go directly to a collector.
Right. The range, it varies on the topography. So, different areas of the country are experiencing different ranges, but they've had 2 meters literally in some situations that are half-mile apart be able to talk to each other. And it's not, when you do that distance, it doesn't increase the power emissions or anything like that. It's the same, the power emission is the power emission. As I said, it's baby monitor type stuff, but they've had some ranges of about half a mile.
So is this going to be a line of sight half mile,
No.
or the topography doesn't really count?
Yep, the signal can bend. Yep. Sir, in the back?
A couple of points. First one is, I believe you said these are running at 900 megahertz.
Yep.
Well, you and I both know as engineers that 900 megahertz is interfered with by all kinds of stuff that's in the way of the signal.
Can be.
So the gentleman there is correct that it may or may not work its way through the woods. However, I'd like to ask, did I understand you to say earlier that the smart meter will notify headquarters when there is an outage event?
As the meter loses power, it sends out a series, a short burst of signals letting it know, letting other meters in the collector know that it's about to lose power. It's called a last gasp signal.
Okay. Now, depending on, now let's say that the outage event is not at my house, but somewhere down the road. In fact, it was during the snowstorm. Your network is, of course, powered by electricity, right?
The meters rely on power for them to function, correct?
Your communications network, the smart meters you're using, is powered by electricity. Does it have battery backup?
The meters themselves do not, the collectors do.
Okay. So if something goes wrong along this, what technically is called a mesh network, going from one meter to another, a bunch of meters go out at once. If it doesn't make it to the collector, you're not going to know about it, right?
Well, the way outage detection happens now is we only take a percentage sample of, even when customers call today, let alone what the meters will do, we don't rely on every customer to call. Once we get enough of a sample on a certain circuit confirmed to be out, we have algorithms in our outage management systems that let us know, this circuit beyond this point is out. And the same thing will happen with the smart meters. They'll, as long as I think it's as low as like 6% of the last gasps get through, we'll identify where the problem is and be able to start dispatching operations to restore.
Is it actually possible that none of the last gasp signals get through?
Anything's physically possible with these systems. The incidence rate of outage reporting is very high based on the technology we've selected and the field history it has. So, anything's possible. There's always a scenario that would, live up to what you're describing, but it's just a very low percentage chance based on the field experience. Yes, sir.
I didn't want to get into health until you're ready to go.
Oh, fire away. I think that's really the end of the content that I have prepared. So we want to take it out.
My only concern on the health thing is that I know that all these things are way within the FCC guidelines, but the FCC guidelines are based on thermal radiation, not non-thermal radiation. They're ancient by anybody's think there's actually no standards for non-thermal radiation. But the thing that really bothers me is the cumulative effect of all this legal stuff no one knows. If you take air pollution, water pollution, and soil contaminants, you take every chemical, and they all meet whatever the guidelines are supposed to be. The cumulative effect of all that is one hell of a huge one. They just did a study with something she had. They did her blood and they did a urine analysis. It's like 200 and something serious contaminants. So my concern on the RF is we don't really know. And we're putting a technology in place, the cumulative. I mean, once you get to the smart appliances, they're all transmitting all the time to your smart meters to tell you when to start your air conditioner, your furnace and all that. I mean, the average household has 15 appliances. And then you tackle on your neighbors. And then, so the cumulative effect of all this background radiation is kind of scary. And nobody really says anything, but every individual smart meter is well within its range. And every individual smart appliance is probably well within the FCC guidelines. But the cumulative effect of potentially hundreds of devices is
It's a very good point. People have been looking at this stuff for 40 years. As I said, Green Mountain Power we do not try to interpret the science or judge the science. That would be irresponsible for us. It's not our area of expertise. What we do is make sure that any devices that we put out are viewed to be safe by the standards bodies that exist. The cumulative effect of this stuff, good point. There's very credible research that says it's a problem. There's very credible research that says there's absolutely no problem. And it's been 40 years of going at that. That's why all of that together makes this, it's a personal choice. And so to support that personal choice, we've developed an opt-out program. And we've collaborated with, one of the lead groups that collaborated with us was an organization called Vermonters for a Clean Environment. They're an organization that represents a bunch of different issues in the state all around clean environment. And so we've worked with them collaboratively and proactively with the help of the Department of Public Service to develop an opt-out program that it's the most progressive, flexible, and lowest cost in the country, because if this is going to come down to a personal choice, which I think it will, we want people to have that choice and an easy mechanism to make it. We think that there's no step forward in technology or in any of our kind of industrial plant, whether it's in the electric sector or any other sector of the U.S. economy, that doesn't come with some sort of impact. Everything has impacts. Nothing does not have impacts. And so we think that the benefits that are delivered through this technology far, far, far outweigh what we view as small impacts that this may have. But we want people to make that decision on their own. That's why we come out and try to educate people in forums like this at the town level, and we offer a very flexible opt-out program.
One little remark about the opt-out, because I was at the Public Service Board meeting in Montpelier on November 1st, and you provided the docket 7307 supplemental memorandum of understanding principles regarding automated metering opt-out. And the first item is, in order to promote the effective implementation of the smart grid while allowing customer choice, it is appropriate at this time to allow customers the choice to opt out of automated meter usage. So to me, that language is a little slippery sounding, because it's appropriate at this time. Does that mean you're going to revisit this and suddenly say, well, no, we feel, this is something that everybody needs to do in order for it to function?
The reason we have no plans to reverse our policy on opt-out. As a matter of fact, no one had to drag us to the trough to create an opt-out. We proactively did that. We didn't. If you look at this issue nationally, state of Oregon, state of California, state of Texas, state of Maine, many utilities try to strong-arm. There'll be no opt-out. This is not an issue. The meters we use is not a concern of our customers. and they had a real problem with that. We took the exact opposite view. We want customers to have choice. We proactively provided an opt-out program. We expect that opt-out program to be available as long as we're operating under this technology.
Well, by statute, there's built-in safeguard that the Public Service Board or Department of Public Service would have to authorize that change among the utilities to be able to make a change in policy like that. It's very unlikely that that would occur. The Public Service Board and the Department of Public Service are not, they push very hard for the opt-out program. They're not very likely to back off.
Yes, sir.
Addressing the opt-out program, in a scenario, it could go both ways. If somebody decides to take a smart meter and walk in and then decide, I really don't want to leave the house, or after everybody's kind of gone through the neighborhood and then they decide, what kind of fees are incumbent upon those decision-making processes?
If somebody changes their mind either way, no fees. So if you opt out now and you change your mind and you would like to get the benefits of a smart meter later, we'll make that change. The only thing that would happen is we would drop the $10 a month manual meter reading charge as a result. If you go the other way and you get a smart meter and you decide you want to opt out and change, there's no fee for that change other than you would see the next bill, you would see the $10 manual meter reading fee. So, yes, sir, in the back.
I want to say thank you for you, someone with your qualifications, being here this evening. When I attended a similar presentation in Dummerston, GMP sent people who basically could say, this is what we're going to do, it's a good idea, but really had no technical background, and said, we're not engineers. Clearly you are, and I'm glad. You have mentioned, of course, your qualifications, and you've also mentioned that some of the information that has been presented here you deem to be alarmist. So I'm going to do two things before I say something. I'm going to present my qualifications. I'm now in my 49th year as a computer engineer, and I've been doing data communications and computer and data security during most of that time. However, nevertheless, I still could be an alarmist. So what I've done, and I'm going to let you other folks know how you can look at this stuff for yourself. MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, publishes a monthly magazine, Technology Review, in which they speak in plain English about many subjects, including the subject of hacking smart meters. So everything I'm going to say here is not based on my personal expertise. It is based on what I have gleaned and summarized from research I have done in MIT's Technology Review. Basically, what I have learned is that smart electric meters benefit power companies by eliminating meter readers, their jobs, and on-site visits to cut off or restore service. How they truly benefit consumers is unclear. What is clear is that smart meters will open the electric distribution grid and our homes and workplaces to new and unprecedented security and privacy risks. Communicating with power companies via two-way wireless radio connections to nearby utility poles, smart meters will be the most extensive computer network in Vermont and a leading attraction for malicious hackers who can work on hacking and disrupting it with a laptop computer in a vehicle parked anywhere. Rapidly introducing smart meters everywhere in Vermont invites universal disruption when they are hacked, especially with a software worm, which will spread faster and faster from a meter to many meters, perhaps cutting off service. The fundamental question then will be, how quickly can these meters be upgraded to fix a vulnerability that hackers found and exploited, as they will? Some key technical questions. Are the wireless meter-to-pole connections encrypted? How strong is the encryption? Encryption meaning in code. Is there a hardware firewall? Can the security software be fixed and updated quickly from a central location soon after hackers break in? Anyone who says that hackers can't or won't break into the smart meter network is wrong. Now, I mentioned that I have some hyperlinks on the internet to 8 articles from Technology Review. If any of you would like to have a look at them, simply Google my blog, which is Vermont Uncommon Taters. That's T-A-T-E-R-S, where you will find hyperlinks to those 8 articles that I've selected, and there are many more there where those are. These were published between 2009 and 2011, the last one quite October. Thank you.
Thank you.
Didn't you cover that earlier in your presentation?
We talked about security and what we call cybersecurity, which is, it goes to his point about hacking. And, I believe, when I think back on my statements, I said no system is foolproof, right? You can't guarantee 100% invulnerability. Every system is vulnerable at some point. And I will talk about the measures we're taking to secure these things. We've had, as I said, Sandia National Labs, one of the 9 major national research labs, has done a full audit of our meter manufacturer's supply chain and manufacturing process from the point of assembly all the way through delivery and installation. They've done a full software security review. They've done a full meter penetration audit. They've done what we call the collectors and the poles. They've done a full collector penetration audit, and they've done a full audit on the what we call the head-end systems, the software systems that control the meter network. That being said, no system is foolproof. Absolutely, you'd be crazy to ever say that. But we feel like we've taken as many steps as we possibly can to secure these environments. And that's what we're going out to the field with.
And what I'm saying to you, sir, is that MIT, which is probably the finest engineering school in the world, the experts there say that, in fact, you folks have not done enough, and anyone who wants to can read their articles where they explain in detail why you have not done enough.
Does that citation you're giving, does that really represent the views of the institution, the entire MIT institution?
It is the official publication of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where peer-reviewed articles are published by resident experts about a number of subjects, one of which is hacking smart meters. So sure, Sandia is good, but I'm saying to you that I'm pretty sure that MIT is fully as good as Sandia, and they are saying that you're wrong. So maybe there's something to be discussed here.
And I think you cited 2009. They were referring to the smart meters in Vermont. Was that the date that you're?
I cited. I chose 8 of the most recent articles, which date from 2009 in the summer to October of 2011.
Okay.
But I'm also prior to doing I was assistant analyst for computer for 10 years. And the point on encryption and security, I don't want to belabor the point because I understand both sides. But if you look at pure logic of how many homes are going to have smart meters, the potential for data integrity to be compromised is often increased. We've gone from 0 to 250 million households. So the potential for hacking is exponential, regardless of how good or bad the encryption technology is.
When you open up these systems, I mean, you're opening up the electrical system with intelligent devices. You're introducing risk into the equation. No argument. Today, on a national level, 7% of all meters are smart meters nationally. Okay? Some of them are hardwired, which have different capabilities. Some of them are wireless. The predominant wave going on right now is wireless. And the incidence of field-level hacking so far has been almost non-existent. That does not mean it's any indicator of the future, right? I'm just saying that's been the experience to date. We're still technically in the early adopter phase of smart meters until you get to about 15%. You're in the early adoption phase. We're about 8 to 9% right now. So it's absolutely a risk. It's a risk we're trying to mitigate to the best of our ability, but a risk is a risk.
Now, the risk would have been eliminated if you'd used a wired network, and I'm not talking about putting carrier over the power line. If you'd hooked up to the telecommunications common carriers lines instead of having wireless, you would have eliminated the problem.
Again, when you look at the pragmatics of doing that and the bandwidth that would provide us, the technology literally does not exist to send meter signals over the telephone lines. That doesn't exist.
You're talking to a 49-year veteran data communications engineer. I can estimate your bandwidth, and I know the available bandwidths on the telecommunications common carriers.
But how can I procure a system-wide, field-proven, financially stable vendor-backed metering solution that from you or from someone who's not in that business? The contemporary manufacturers of this technology you can only select from a certain number of technologies. That's what's available on the market, where I'm not buying meters that have a installed footprint of 1,000 meters. One of my criteria was the vendor had to have at least 2 million meters installed and operating on the technology I was buying. That was one of my criteria, because that's, again, we're managing risk here, mitigating risk. I don't want to be a bleeding edge adopter of this technology. And so that was one of my criteria. So that whittled my options down to a certain amount. And that's I think, a responsible thing to do.
I'm actually tempted to laugh at you, because when you say the meter's going to communicate every 4 to 6 hours, and you say you need extremely high bandwidth, something is wrong.
I'm welcome to take the argument offline. And
this is a public meeting, sir.
Say again?
This is a public meeting, sir, so it won't be
No, actually,
offline.
this is GMP information session. That's what we put this together for. This wasn't a personal forum for anybody.
Indeed. Not
Do you have a
very
cell
good.
phone? Do you have a cell phone?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you afraid it's going to be hacked by Useport?
I beg your pardon?
Are you afraid it's going to be hacked by Useport?
Actually, a cell phone can be hacked, but it's not the same situation.
Yeah, I would hack voicemail.
Pardon me?
Make the right decision. Thank you very much.
Very interesting.
And not as qualified. I would like to thank you all for coming this evening. I felt it was very important that we get as much information as possible. And in light of that, there are handouts over that speak to the health issues and the opt-out issues and things like that. So please feel free to take the handouts. There are also a couple of handouts over there from organizations that have a differing view. And the one, No Smart Meters in Vermont, is over there with their website, and they can provide you with information if you go to their website. And I would like to thank all of you for your thoughtful questions. A lot of things that I hadn't thought about were brought up. It was a very good discussion, very thoughtful. I appreciate it. And in the future, if we need another forum, I'm sure we could arrange it again with Brian or one of those other organizations that have offered to come and speak with us about their point of view, and I would be more than willing to do that again. But thank you all for your courtesy and for your time this evening. We spent the better part of 2 hours doing this, and I think it was informative, and we can make our best decisions when we're best informed. So thank you. Have a good night.